One of these recipes is called the worst grilled cheese ever, and it's from Gordon Ramsay.
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
He's literally one of the best chefs in the world, so why is the internet hating on his recipes so much? It doesn't make any sense to me. So today I'm testing Gordon Ramsay's most iconic dishes to find out what's actually worth making and which ones he should be embarrassed by.
That is disgusting.
But speaking of the grilled cheese, let's get into it. Calling it the worst grilled cheese of all time is a bold statement, but somebody said Gordon's effort completely phoned in and generally appalling for someone known for yelling at novice chefs on TV. And someone else said, that cheese isn't really melting. And I think I know what the problem is. He uses a combination of Asiago cheese and Romano black peppercorn. I couldn't find Romano black peppercorn, so I have Romano and like a different peppercorn cheese that hopefully will be a little more melty because both of these cheeses are very hard. But he starts by cutting them into slices, and apparently he says it gives it a very nice melt. Do you guys see how hard this cheese is? In my experience, Asiago and Romanos don't have a nice melt. They're more like a finishing cheese. But maybe this one will save the day. Okay, we got our cheese slices, and now he uses an artisan bread, which he says you want to cut them into thick slices. Now he takes some butter and slathers it on the outside of the bread to get it on both sides. And now we layer on the cheese slices. We have our Asiago, peppercorn cheese, the Romano, and then in theory, I feel like this sounds delicious. He adds kimchi to the sandwich. This will give it a nice little spicy fermented kick. Kimchi, I can handle. Add a final layer of cheese on top of the kimchi, and let's close it up. And this is where things get a little interesting. Let's fire up our grill. So instead of using a perfectly normal stove in the kitchen, he cooks into what he calls the oven.
We're gonna stick that in the oven.
AKA my fireplace. He starts by putting the whole cast iron pan in there, lets it get hot, and then we're gonna add a generous amount of olive oil. Y'alls, don't try this at home. Okay, the pan is nice and smoky, so now I'm gonna add the sandwich. He cooks it for about 2 minutes on each side. Throughout the whole process, he keeps telling us to press it down, press it down. So that's what I'm gonna do. When he flips it, he takes it off the heat, and this is where everybody was roasting him, that his bread was burnt and his cheese showing zero signs of melting. Well, let's finish this. The other side of the bread doesn't look too bad, but as you can clearly see, cheese was not melted. Let me cut it up and see what's inside. It's definitely not a melty grilled cheese like you would expect. It's more of a grilled bread cheese sandwich, but let's see how it tastes. The cheese combo, delicious. The kimchi adds a nice little crunchy kick in there. The bread, nice and toasty. I think the biggest crime of all wasn't that he didn't melt his cheese. It was the method of cooking, because you have to wonder how often is he cooking in there and why did he think that would be a good idea? And dare I say, this might be the real idiot sandwich. And coming from a man with 7 Michelin stars calling this incredible, it needs a little work. 5 out of 10. If that was the worst of the worst, can his other iconic dishes redeem him? And now we have his famous scrambled eggs, which has the internet's opinion split. Somebody said, these eggs are very easy to make and they turn out good. Gives the eggs a nice texture. While somebody else said, the texture is more like canned creamed corn than eggs to me. Leave it to Gordon Ramsay to come up with some new pretentious way of making scrambled eggs. I don't know if it's pretentious or not, but it's definitely an unusual way to make scrambled eggs, at least to me. Because we start by having a cold pot and we're just gonna add 6 whole eggs straight into it. We're not gonna whisk it, we're not gonna beat it, we're just gonna crack them open cold into the saucepan. 6 eggs sure is a lot, so I'm wondering if this method would actually work for like 2. And this is where the technique gets a little chaotic and crazy, because he cranks the heat up to 3/4 of the way high and then just starts whisking and stirring with a rubber spatula. I hope I don't mess this up. Scraping the bottom until, I don't know what he's looking for, it gets nice and curdly. Okay, I'm breaking up the yolks because I feel like scrambled eggs should be well mixed. Okay, this looks a little bit better. But so far we just have gloopy liquid eggs. I'm just keeping it moving. Okay, now you can start to see the eggs sticking to the side of the pot. I should also mention that he's using a non-stick pot and mine is stainless steel, but this method I feel like should work on any type of pot. Okay, the egg's starting to curdle. Does this mean I should add the butter? I'm gonna do it. Oh gosh, it's already sticking at the bottom. Okay, now we do 30 seconds. Pull it off heat. Oh gosh, it's already sticking. 10 seconds. Put it back on for 30 seconds. Okay, now take it off for another 10 seconds. This better be the best eggs I've ever had because this is stressful more than anything. Okay, my last cycle of this. The eggs don't look very cooked. Am I doing this right? Okay. Last cycle, I'm gonna turn off the heat and he just lets it kind of sit there. And then now I have to season it. He adds a teaspoon of creme fraiche, salt, and pepper. Give it one final mix. And I'm gonna have to agree with one of the comments. It does look like canned cream corn,
wow.
But is it fluffy and delicious? All right, he serves the scrambled eggs on a nice piece of toast. 3 whole eggs on 1 toast. After you cook it, it doesn't look like 6 eggs. We'll garnish it with some chives for color. And will this be one of the best or worst scrambled eggs that I've ever had? It's definitely one of the runniest. Now, I'm not sure if it's the best or the worst because it's neither. I do have to say it's the creamiest one I've ever had. I'd have to agree with one of the comments that it just kind of feels undercooked. And it's not gross, but it's more custardy than your typical fluffy scrambled eggs. But maybe that's the whole point of it. He's introducing a new way to make scrambled eggs that we're all not used to. But I'm still not sure how I feel about it. So 7 out of 10. After the last few recipes, I'm really beginning to wonder how he got that Master Chef title, but I digress because this next one is one of the most iconic Gordon Ramsay recipes. It's actually one of his personal favorites that he even mentioned he wants to be buried with it in his coffin.
I would like to put this dessert inside that coffin.
The sticky toffee pudding is served at least 20 of his restaurants, and when people try it there, they love it. But when they go home to try to recreate it, they tell a different story. Somebody said, it promises warm, gooey comfort, and too often it delivers a sad, dense cake. Somebody else said, the cake was dry, the sauce was grainy, and somehow it managed to taste both too sweet and too bland at the same time. So I've never been to a Gordon Ramsay restaurant. I don't really know what to expect, but I'm hoping that my sticky toffee pudding does not end up anything like theirs. But he starts by chopping up his dates, which apparently is the main ingredient for a sticky toffee pudding. I got the pitted kind here, so they're a little bit easier to chop. Okay, let's transfer all this to a bowl. Then he adds a little bit of baking soda and submerges it in hot boiling water. Already the measurements were off because he called for a 1/4 cup of boiling water, and clearly that didn't cover anything. Much better. Okay, let me just stir this up a little bit and it should soften up. So I'm gonna set it aside while we move on. Next step, we're gonna mix together some butter, brown sugar, get it nice and fluffy. Now we drop in an egg. Let me just scrape down the bowl real quick, give it another mix. That should be good. So far, the recipe doesn't seem too challenging, but now we're gonna combine the dry ingredients, which includes some flour and baking powder. He says to combine it with the hand mixer, but I think just to keep the cake from getting too dense, I'm gonna do it by hand. Just until it combines, because we don't wanna overmix. And next step, we have to blend our soaked dates into a puree. So we have our soaked dates, but I'm also gonna pour in the original 1/4 cup of boiling water like he mentioned. And let's give it a whirl. And now we just fold in the pureed dates straight into the batter. I have to divide the batter into like a large muffin tin, so let me grease and flour it real quick. And now his direction says to bake it for 18 to 20 minutes, but I'm a little bit confused because somebody attempted this on Master Chef and he thought it was not a good idea because he said it would take hours. So I'm not really sure where those hours got cut in this recipe. Let's bake it up. And now to make the toffee sauce, we're gonna combine some butter, brown sugar, heavy cream and milk, corn syrup, and a tiny pinch of salt and bring it up to a boil for 3 minutes. I realize he likes to start everything off with a cold pan. Maybe it mixes better that way, but I'm curious to see if we're gonna get a nice and smooth sauce or a gritty one like that person said. This sauce is boiling, and based on the consistency, I would say it's looking pretty smooth and we don't have any grit here. But now I have to remove it off heat, and he calls for bourbon at the end, but I'm just gonna add some vanilla extract. Just in time to pull our sticky toffee cakes out of the oven. I'm gonna let it cool slightly for a few minutes and then we're going to dress it up. Okay, I think they're ready. Let me go ahead and remove them from the pan. Oh, actually, they just fell right out. Perfect. Now let's plate. I think with his toffee pudding, he actually serves them upside down like this. And a lot of times I've seen it with a scoop of ice cream on top. Our toffee sauce has cooled and thickened quite a bit, but let's spoon some over. And I'm gonna say this looks good enough to be in a restaurant. This looks amazing. Let's see if this sticky toffee pudding recipe redeemed Gordon Ramsay. It looks nice and fluffy, not like a dry, dense brick. The sauce was not gritty, but let's see if it's bland and sweet at the same time. So I'm not sure why it's called a sticky toffee pudding because it's more cake-like than anything to me. I wonder if I should have underbaked it a little bit more, but the toffee sauce on top gives it that extra sweetness that honestly makes it perfect. If this was my first recipe that I've ever made from Gordon Ramsay, I would have to agree that he is a master chef, and whatever those people did wrong at home must have been a user error because this recipe is exceptional. I'm definitely gonna be trying it again, and I'm gonna give Gordon Ramsay's sticky toffee pudding a 9 out of 10. This next recipe is his spaghetti bolognese, not bolognese, bolognese, which he spells incorrectly.
Bolognese.
It didn't come from a cookbook, but he made it during a live cook-along, and let's just say Italians have been arguing with him ever since. But he starts off by grating his onion and carrot so that they could puree easily and cook faster. So he says to grate the onions, just keep your hands flat, which seems a little risky. I'm gonna do it this way. Maybe this is more of a method for a pro chef, and I would have much rather used my chopper. But the onions has me crying. Oh my god. Oh, it burns. Yeah, that's enough. Let's just cook it off. So he has a hot pan and we're gonna drizzle in some olive oil and then pop in the vegetables. We're just trying to sweat it out. He says that grating it and cooking it this way makes it come out like a puree, but I don't think he realizes that puree happens after like hours of cooking. Or maybe he does, I'm not sure. But now we have to lightly season it with some salt. Then he takes 2 garlic cloves, pushes it through a crusher and just slices it off. Stirs it a little bit more. The vegetables are not exactly pureeing, they're more browning. But now we have to add in some oregano, which somebody said bolognese sauce doesn't use any garlic or herbs. It might taste nice, but you can never call it a bolognese sauce. Crazy. Somebody tell me if that's actually true because I feel like in most bolognese sauce I've seen herbs and garlic. But now to the center of the pan where it's hot, we add in our minced meat. We're just sweating the mince quickly so that it doesn't gray. I don't think there's a way to avoid the graying because that's when it cooks. He doesn't exactly brown it at all either, but we're gonna push it to the side and add in some tomato paste. Once that's all mixed up, he adds red wine. The red wine is supposed to give it some depth and body, and it's supposed to get nice and syrupy. Adding it did make it smell pretty good though. I also feel like at some point I should add some salt. We're gonna go with it. I guess this looks syrupy enough, so now we're gonna add in some chopped tomatoes. And the most diabolical part of this entire recipe, some Worcestershire sauce, which had this Italian chef screaming. Am I making a bolognese or am I making a chili? I don't know. Okay, now we're just gonna let it simmer for a few minutes. Our meat sauce looks like it's just about ready, but now to finish it off, he adds a little bit of milk. I guess we're trying to make a cream sauce. And this is Gordon Ramsay's 15-minute bolognese sauce. Somebody said it would have been fine if he called it a meat sauce, but a bolognese sauce is not correct. Somebody else pointed out on a Master Chef episode, Gordon was asked if he ever made bolognese under 3 hours, and he said no. Right. But let's serve it over some spaghetti. So in the video, he doesn't even show it served on any spaghetti, but it does look pretty hearty. So let me give it a try. Does it taste like an authentic one from Nana? Probably not. But is it good? Yeah, it's pretty cozy and tasty. I'm not gonna complain. But that's just the thing. If Gordon Ramsay called it a meat sauce, I don't think anybody would have a problem with it. But because he called it such an iconic Italian dish,
Bolognese.
people were up in arms. So maybe it just needs a little bit of a rebranding, but it's delicious and I'm gonna give it 7 out of 10. And Gordon, it's spelled bolognese, not bolognese. Now this one might just be Gordon Ramsay's most iconic recipe. It's his famous beef Wellington, and people say it's really not worth the effort. But he argues if you want a really nice change to roast turkey, this has to be the ultimate for your table. And somebody said, I asked my mom to make this instead of her dry turkey. So we'll see who's right and who's wrong. But first he starts by seasoning his beef tenderloin roast with salt and pepper. I'm gonna put extra on the cutting board because it looks like he practically rolls rolls it in a lot of salt and pepper. He mentions that the beef tenderloin is like a filet mignon. It's the most expensive but leanest and tender cut of the cow. This recipe better be worth it. Now in a nice and hot cast iron pan, he adds in his oil and sears each side of the meat for about 60 seconds. Whoa, look at it shrink. And it looks like he pushes the meat all the way to the side, almost like he's frying it. And while the meat is still hot, we're gonna brush some Dijon or English mustard right on top. He says this should seal in all the moisture and give it some extra flavor. I've never put Dijon mustard on my meat before, so this should be interesting. Let's get the backside. And now we let it rest. Now comes what he says is the most essential part of this whole recipe: the mushrooms. He starts by destemming his mushrooms. I wonder why he's destemming them, because these are supposed to be edible too. The recipe calls for a pound of mushrooms, and I like these mushrooms, so I'm gonna mix them. Mushrooms and mushrooms. He also adds in a ton of salt and pepper. Then he chops up his garlic and throws it into the food processor. But if everything's gonna be blitz up finely, why can't I just throw these in too? Let's chop it up. He processes them until they're almost like a paste. I need to scrape this down. But it smells good. Now using the same cast iron pan, we're going to cook down the paste and really just extract all the moisture out, because he says the success of a Wellington is that you dry those mushrooms out. And somebody said a soggy bottom is the most common problem in a Wellington. This is the #1 reason why homemade Wellingtons fail. So I'm gonna have to make sure everything is like super duper dry. Ugh, it's like a paste. As I'm cooking it, I can see the moisture coming out of it, and I don't want my beef Wellington to fail, so I'm gonna have to dry this out completely. I'm gonna try a trick. Just spread it down into a thin layer and just let it dry out at the bottom, and just keep repeating that. It looks like the moisture has reduced a little bit, so I'm gonna add some thyme now. Fresh thyme. I don't know if you guys have a favorite herb, but I have to say thyme is probably one of my favorites. It's just so savory. Oh yeah. I think we're just about there. The mushrooms are done. Now comes the assembly part. He takes his cling wrap and just spreads it out on the counter. So apparently this is also supposed to lock in the moisture. And then we're gonna lay over a few pieces of prosciutto. 3, and then I'm gonna put one on top right here for coverage when we roll. Okay, I'm questioning myself because this whole thing is supposed to cover that piece of meat. And I don't have any more prosciutto, but I do have some more cured meat. So we're just gonna lay it at the bottom here. Insurance. Yay! Our mushroom paste has also significantly dried out. So now I'm gonna spread it on the prosciutto. It reminds me of a vegetarian burger. I also have to make sure that it's able to wrap around the entire piece of meat. So I'm gonna use my hands. Press it down. Looks pretty good. Hopefully it'll wrap around that whole piece of meat, which is what I'm gonna try to do next. Oh, maybe a little bit too much. Lift this up. It's kind of like wrapping a really big piece of sushi. But he says use the cling wrap to guide you and like pull it tight, like squeeze it. Try to squeeze it as tight as I can. Hey, I did it. Okay, now I have to kind of stick the sides in, and then we're gonna do it really tight. I think the reason why somebody said the first one was a mess. Soggy pastry, loose layers, no structure. I made it several more times and kept getting the same result. I could feel like an air pocket right here, and like he said, you have to roll it really tight. So I'm trying to get all the air bubbles out, and I'm gonna be honest, I feel some looseness, but trying my best to keep it together. And then he does this doodad. As tight as possible. Kind of like a meat sausage, and just keep it really tight. I hope that's good enough. But now he sticks it in the fridge for 15 minutes. Now I have to pull more cling wrap and add our puff pastry right on top. Then I have to remove our meat sausage from the cling wrap and roll it in our puff pastry. Let's see, what's the best way to do this? Maybe I should cut it. I feel like 15 minutes in the fridge didn't really do much. It's like barely cold. But I would say the shape held together. Now he says roll it over just enough so that it covers. Again, using the cling wrap to guide us. And make sure you roll it up tight. Wait, but what if the puff pastry does not cover it? Okay, stretch it out a little bit. Okay, here we go. And then just like the other process, we have to cover the sides, get it into a nice little passo. He wraps it up again, sticks it in the fridge for about 5 minutes while the oven preheats. Again, 5 minutes in the fridge didn't really do much for the puff pastry since it's a little sticky still, but that's okay. But now he brushes it with an egg wash. All you need is an egg yolk. Pop! and it's supposed to give it a beautiful golden color. Must be looking more like a burrito. But he says now comes a really chefy technique part where he takes the back of a knife and just starts scoring it, so once the beef Wellington comes out of the oven, it has a pretty design on it. Little cross sections like this. I want to do like a little chevron type of shape. That looks good. Final step, salt it, and then into the oven it goes. And here's our beef Wellington. It looks good, but I see bubbling, and I'm not quite sure if that bubbling is due to water or butter from the puff pastry, but we have to let it sit for 10 minutes to rest, and then we'll find out. It looks like a giant meat croissant though. Okay, it's rested for a while, and I have to say that the presentation looks beautiful. I feel really good about this, but I don't know what's inside, because somebody said I followed the recipe online to a T, pulled out my masterpiece from the oven, and watched in horror as the knife revealed a pale, damp, and doughy disgrace. Please don't be a disgrace. It's time to do our reveal. I'm just gonna hold it. Ready? Whoa, wait! I don't think it looks soggy. Okay, I feel like it could be a little bit more cooked. It's a little on the rare side for me, but let's cut a slice and really find out. Oh, it just slid out. Honestly, it doesn't feel too soggy. If it's served right away as it's supposed to, there's a little bit of liquid because I just cut it open, but there's still a little bit of stiffness to the dough. But now the real question for me, what does a beef Wellington actually taste like? Cheers. It tastes like a savory meat pie. I will have to say, because he salted every single step of the way, it leans a little bit on the salty side. But overall, I love the pastry. The meat is perfectly tender. The mushrooms, super savory. And I can see why this would be so much better than a dry turkey for special occasions. I would say Gordon Ramsay's iconic recipe lives up to its reputation, and I'm gonna give his beef Wellington a 9 out of 10. He might have some misses, but his wins are some pretty good wins. But if you like this video, go watch me test more celebrity recipes.